My name is Nora Hale. I'm 34 years old and I train rescue swimmers for the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. 16 years ago, my parents threw me out of their house with one canvas bag after a boy drowned in Blackwater Lake. My younger sister had been driving the boat. My parents knew it. I knew it. And somewhere beneath 12 feet of dark water, the lake knew it too. But my sister was 16. She had a scholarship waiting, a reputation my mother had spent years polishing, and what my father called a promising future. I was 18, legally an adult, the dependable daughter, the one who never cried in public. So my mother placed one hand on my shoulder and said the sentence that changed the course of my life. "You're the strong one, Nora. You'll be fine." Then my father put a bag on the porch and locked the door behind me. Last Saturday, my mother called me for the first time in 16 years. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't ask whether I was married, where I lived, or what kind of woman I had become. She said, "Mallory's son is missing on the lake." By the time I reached the old marina, a storm had swallowed the shoreline. My nephew was trapped somewhere in the same water where a 17-year-old boy had died all those years ago. And my family was already preparing another lie. They thought I would carry it because I had carried the first one. They thought I would protect my sister again. What they didn't know was that this time, the boy they wanted me to sacrifice was awake, and he was listening. Before I tell you what happened at Blackwater Lake, take a moment to subscribe if you enjoy stories about family, survival, and the moment someone finally refuses to carry a lie that was never theirs. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been called the strong one because your family expected you to survive what they would never ask anyone else to endure? Now let me take you back to the summer I turned 18. Blackwater Lake wasn't really black. Not in daylight. In the morning, it was silver. At noon, it turned green where the trees reflected along the western shore. Near sunset, the whole surface became a sheet of hammered copper. But after dark, the water changed. The lake was deep enough in places that no one had ever measured the bottom properly. Old trees stood beneath the surface from before the valley was flooded. Their branches could catch an anchor line, a fishing net, or an ankle. My father used to say the lake kept what it wanted. His name was Dean Hale, and he owned Hale's Landing, the only full-service marina on the northern side of Blackwater. He had inherited 3 docks, a fuel pump, and a weather-beaten bait shop from his father. By the time I was a teenager, he had expanded it into a restaurant, 12 rental cabins, a boat repair shed, and a private event lawn that overlooked the water. People in our county treated my father like he had built the lake himself. He sponsored Little League teams. He donated prizes to church raffles. Every 4th of July, he stood on the marina roof with a microphone and counted down the fireworks. My mother, Elaine, handled the image. She chose the flowers outside the restaurant. She wrote the marina newsletter. She remembered every customer's birthday and knew which families wanted cabin 7 because it had the best view of the sunset. She also knew exactly how to tell a story until everyone believed it. Then there was my younger sister, Mallory. Mallory was 16 that summer. She had long blonde hair, pale blue eyes, and the kind of smile adults described as lighting up a room. She sang at church. She was captain of the school swim team. She had just received a partial scholarship to a private academy in Nashville, where my mother believed she would meet the right people and become someone important. My parents loved both of us. That's what I told myself for years. They just loved us differently. Mallory was loved like a glass ornament. She was praised, displayed, and protected from anything that might crack her. I was loved like a toolbox. Useful, reliable. Stored out of sight until something broke. When I was 11 and Mallory forgot her lunch, my mother drove 20 minutes to bring it to her. When I forgot mine the following week, she told me hunger would teach me responsibility. When Mallory quit piano after my parents had paid for 6 months of lessons, my father said she was still discovering herself. When I asked to quit my Saturday shifts at the marina so I could join the debate team, he said the family needed me. I learned to fuel boats before I learned to drive a car. I knew how to tie a bowline knot in the dark. I could clean a carburetor, reset a tripped dock breaker, and tell from the smell of an engine whether it was running rich. By 17, I was teaching children how to swim in the shallow cove beside Dock 3. I loved the water, but I respected it. Mallory loved the attention she received when she was near it. There was one phrase my parents used whenever the imbalance became impossible to ignore. "You're the strong one." When Mallory cried because a boy didn't invite her to homecoming, my mother canceled my birthday dinner so we could stay home with her. "You understand, Nora. You're the strong one." When Mallory damaged my car and my father made me pay for the repair because she didn't have a job, he clapped me on the shoulder. "You'll recover. You're the strong one." When my grandmother died and I was asked to prepare food for 30 mourners while Mallory stayed upstairs because funerals overwhelmed her, my mother said it again. "You're the strong one." For years, I thought it was a compliment. It took me a long time to understand that in my family, strong meant expendable. The week before the accident was supposed to be the best week of my life. I had graduated from high school with honors. I had been accepted into a 2-year emergency medical services program in Knoxville. My plan was to become a paramedic, then apply to a state rescue unit. I had saved $3,400 from marina shifts, swim lessons, and cleaning rental cabins. It wasn't enough for everything, but it was a beginning. My father had promised I could keep working weekends and live at home while I studied. For the first time, I could see a road leading somewhere beyond Hale's Landing. Then Mallory's scholarship letter arrived. My mother framed it. Literally. She bought a silver frame and placed the letter on the living room mantel. That Friday, she organized a celebration dinner at the Marina restaurant. There were balloons, a cake with Mallory's school colors, and 25 guests. No one had thrown a party when I was accepted into my program. I told myself it didn't matter. At 18, I was still very good at telling myself things didn't matter. The accident happened the following night. Saturday, June 14th. I remember the date because every year, when it comes around, my body knows before my mind does. The marina had hosted a graduation party that evening. Most of the families left by 10. My father went home early with a headache. My mother drove Mallory back to the house after discovering her drinking something from a red plastic cup behind the restaurant. I stayed to help close. At 10:43 p.m., I was locking the fuel cabinet when I heard an engine turn over at the end of Dock 6. Not a small engine. The deep, expensive roar of my father's blue runabout, the Maribel. No one was permitted to take the Maribel without him. I walked to the end of the dock and saw Mallory behind the wheel. 3 other teenagers were with her. Ethan Ross sat beside her. Jenna Cole and Daniel Mercer were in the back. Ethan was 17. He worked summers at his mother's hardware store and had been dating Mallory for 3 months. Daniel was waving an unopened bottle over his head. Jenna was laughing. Mallory saw me and placed one finger against her lips. "Don't," she called. "Turn the engine off. It's one ride." "You've been drinking." "I had half a cup." "Mallory, turn it off." Ethan looked uncomfortable. "Nora's right," he said. "We can go tomorrow." Mallory's face changed. She hated being corrected in front of people, especially by me. "You're not my mother," she said. "No, I'm the person who'll have to explain this when Dad finds the boat gone." She smiled then. A small, reckless smile. "Then don't explain it." She pushed the throttle forward. The Maribel pulled away so fast that the stern struck the dock. Wood cracked. Daniel shouted with excitement. Within seconds, their lights were moving into the darkness. I should have called the sheriff immediately. I know that now. But I was 18, and calling the sheriff meant Mallory would be arrested for taking the boat and drinking. It meant losing her scholarship. It meant my mother blaming me forever. So I did what strong daughters are trained to do. I tried to fix it quietly. I grabbed the keys to one of our aluminum fishing boats, started the motor, and followed them. The weather report had predicted clear skies, but Blackwater made its own weather. By the time I crossed the center channel, wind had begun moving down from the ridge. The surface turned rough. The warm evening air dropped 10 degrees in minutes. I saw the Maribel's navigation lights near the western shore. Mallory was heading toward Widow's Pass, a narrow stretch between two flooded ridges, where the current accelerated after heavy rain. I flashed my spotlight. She ignored it. I sounded the horn. Ethan turned and looked back at me. Even from 50 yards away, I could see fear on his face. Then lightning lit the lake. For one white second, everything became perfectly visible. Mallory's hands on the wheel. Daniel standing where he should have been seated. Jenna reaching for the side rail. Ethan shouting something. And directly ahead of them, the broken trunk of a submerged tree rising just beneath the water. I screamed. Mallory turned too late. The Maribel struck the trunk at an angle. The hull lifted. The boat rolled onto its side and threw all four of them into the lake. Then darkness returned. I reached them in less than a minute. It felt like an hour. Mallory was screaming. Jenna was clinging to an overturned seat cushion. Daniel had disappeared beneath the surface, then came up coughing near the stern. Ethan was nowhere. I killed my engine before the propeller could hurt anyone. I threw Jenna a flotation ring. I pulled Mallory against the side of my boat and told her to hold on. Then I went into the water. The lake was colder than it should have been in June. I found Daniel first. His jacket had caught on a piece of metal beneath the overturned boat. I freed him and pushed him toward the surface. Then I went back for Ethan. The water was black. I couldn't see my own hands. I searched by touch, sweeping beneath the hull, feeling along broken seats, ropes, metal, branches. My lungs began to burn. I surfaced once. Mallory was crying my name. I went down again. My hand found fabric, a sleeve, then an arm. Ethan was tangled beneath the steering console, his leg trapped by a cable. I pulled. The cable held. I surfaced, took one breath, and dove again. I pulled until something tore in my shoulder. I kicked against the boat. The cable didn't move. By the time another marina boat arrived, Ethan had been beneath the surface for more than 6 minutes. We brought him up. I performed CPR on the floor of my fishing boat while rain struck his face. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Again. 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 His mother's name was Ruth. I remember thinking I needed to keep going because Ruth would be waiting for him. The paramedics took over when we reached shore. They worked on Ethan for 23 more minutes. At 12:18 a.m., they stopped. The storm moved east. The rain softened. And Blackwater Lake became quiet again. The sheriff separated us for questioning. Mallory was wrapped in a blanket, shaking so hard her teeth clicked. Daniel had a concussion. Jenna was vomiting near the ambulance. My father arrived wearing jeans and an undershirt. My mother was still in her nightgown beneath a raincoat. She ran straight to Mallory. Not to me. Mallory buried her face in our mother's chest. "It was an accident," she sobbed. My father looked at the damaged boat, then at Ethan's body beneath a white sheet. He didn't ask what happened. He asked, who was driving? No one answered. The sheriff at the time was a man named Walter Ross, Ethan's uncle. He stood a few yards away speaking to a deputy, his face gray. My father pulled my mother and me behind the repair shed. Mallory followed. The rain dripped from the metal roof. My shoulder was throbbing. There was blood on my knee. My mother held Mallory so tightly it looked painful. My father spoke quietly. "Nora, listen carefully." I already knew. Some part of me had known from the moment he asked who was driving. "No. You don't even know what I'm going to say." "I'm not saying I drove." Mallory began to cry harder. My mother looked at me as though I had slapped her. "She's 16. She took the boat. She made a mistake. Ethan is dead." My mother flinched when I said his name. My father stepped closer. You're 18. You have experience operating boats. You can say you took them out because they were celebrating. You lost control in the storm. I didn't. No one saw who was at the wheel. I saw. Nora. I saw her. Mallory's face was wet and colorless. I didn't mean to hit anything, she whispered. My father lowered his voice further. If Mallory is charged, she loses the scholarship. She could be sent away. She could carry this for the rest of her life. She should carry what she did. My mother's eyes hardened. You don't mean that. I tried to save him, and you couldn't, she snapped. The words hit me harder than the storm. My mother immediately looked sorry, but she didn't take them back. She adjusted the blanket around Mallory's shoulders. Then she gave me the sentence. You're the strong one, Nora. You'll be fine. I stared at her. Behind us, an ambulance door closed. You want me to confess to killing someone? We're asking you to protect your sister. You're asking me to become the person Ethan's family blames. My father said, We'll get you a lawyer. My mother added, It was a storm. At worst, it's negligence. People will understand. Will Ruth understand? No one answered. My father's jaw tightened. You have one opportunity to keep this family together. I looked at Mallory. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Tell them the truth, I said. She shook her head. Mallory, I can't. You can. I can't be the reason he died. But you were. My mother stepped between us. That's enough. The sheriff called my name from across the marina. My father gripped my arm. Think about what you're doing. I pulled away. Then I walked out from behind the shed. I told Sheriff Ross the truth. I told him I had seen Mallory behind the wheel. Mallory told him I was lying. She claimed I had taken the group out and then followed in another boat after dropping them near the western shore. It made no sense. But grief rarely waits for sense. Daniel couldn't remember clearly because of his concussion. Jenna said she had been drinking and didn't know who was driving when the boat struck the tree. There were no cameras on Dock 6 in those days. The storm had damaged the Maribel so badly that investigators couldn't recover useful prints from the wheel. The official report listed the operator as undetermined. No one was charged. But my family didn't need a courtroom to punish me. They had a town. By Sunday morning, my mother had already begun telling people that I had taken the boat without permission. She said I was angry because Mallory had received a scholarship. She said I was trying to shift blame because I couldn't live with what happened. She never directly said I had killed Ethan. She didn't have to. She told the story carefully enough that everyone arrived there on their own. Ruth Ross refused to speak to me at the funeral. Someone wrote murderer across the windshield of my car in red paint. The marina stopped scheduling my shifts. Parents withdrew their children from my swimming lessons. My acceptance into the emergency medical program was still valid, but my father told me he would no longer allow me to live at home. The final conversation happened 5 days after Ethan's funeral. I came downstairs to find one canvas duffel bag beside the front door. My clothes were inside. Not all of them. Whatever my mother had chosen. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, underwear, my toothbrush. The framed acceptance letter to my program was missing. So were the $3,400 I had saved in the metal box beneath my bed. My father stood in the hallway. My mother was seated at the kitchen table. Mallory was upstairs. What is this? I asked. My father crossed his arms. You made your choice. My money is gone. You earned it working at the family business. It was mine. You lived under our roof. I looked at my mother. She stared at her folded hands. You're throwing me out? Only until you're ready to repair the damage you've caused, she said. What does that mean? Tell people you were confused. I wasn't. Tell Sheriff Ross you can't be certain who was driving. I am certain. My father opened the front door. Hot afternoon air entered the hallway. You're 18. You wanted to be treated like an adult. I lifted the bag. It was lighter than I expected. My entire life weighed less than 20 pounds. My mother finally looked at me. There were tears in her eyes. For one moment, I thought she would stop me. Instead, she said it again. "You're the strong one. You'll be fine." The door closed before I reached the end of the walkway. I stood by the road with one bag and $9 in my wallet. I called 3 friends. The first didn't answer. The second said her parents didn't want to become involved. The third whispered that her mother believed I should turn myself in. At 6:40 that evening, I called my father's older sister, June. Aunt June lived 90 miles away in Knoxville. She had divorced young, never remarried, and worked as a nurse at a rehabilitation hospital. My mother called her difficult. My father called her selfish. June answered on the second ring. "Nora?" I tried to explain calmly. I made it through 7 words. Then my voice broke. June didn't ask whether the town's story was true. She didn't ask whether I had apologized. She said, "Where are you?" She arrived 2 hours later in a green Honda with a dented passenger door. When she saw me sitting outside a closed gas station with my bag between my feet, she got out, walked across the parking lot, and wrapped both arms around me. I waited for her to say I was strong. She didn't. She said, "You don't have to be strong tonight." That was the first time anyone had given me permission not to be. Aunt June lived in a small brick duplex near the hospital. The spare room had yellow walls, a narrow bed, and a ceiling fan that clicked every 7th rotation. It was the safest room I had ever slept in. I expected my parents to call the next morning, then the next week, then on my birthday. They didn't. Mallory didn't call either. Within a month, my father had changed the locks at the house. By autumn, my mother had removed every photograph of me from the Marina restaurant. It was as though the lake had taken 2 people that night, Ethan Ross, and the version of me who still believed my family would eventually choose the truth. I started the emergency medical program in August. Aunt June helped me apply for aid. I worked nights cleaning equipment at a private ambulance company. On weekends, I taught beginner swimming classes at an indoor pool where no one knew my last name. The first year was brutal. I had nightmares about Ethan's sleeve beneath the water. Sometimes I woke with my hands clenched around the sheets, convinced I was still pulling against that cable. I almost dropped out twice. June refused to let me disappear. She drove me to therapy. She sat outside the office the first 4 appointments because I was too ashamed to admit I needed someone there. My therapist, Dr. Palmer, asked why I had chosen emergency medicine after what happened. I said, "Because next time I want to be faster." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Nora, you were 18. You entered dark water without equipment and brought 3 people back. You were not too slow." I didn't believe him then, but I remembered the sentence. After becoming a paramedic, I trained in flood response, then swiftwater rescue, then dive recovery. I joined a county emergency team at 24. At 28, I became the youngest woman in the state unit to qualify as a lead rescue swimmer. At 32, I began training new recruits. My life wasn't glamorous. I lived in a modest townhouse outside Knoxville. I drove a 10-year-old truck. I had been engaged once, briefly, to a firefighter named Adam who wanted children and a life without midnight call-outs. We ended kindly. I wasn't wealthy or famous, but every day, I did work that mattered. When people were trapped in floodwater, I went toward them. When a boat overturned, I entered the water. When families stood on shore believing the worst, I gave them every honest chance I could. I built a life around the thing my parents had tried to turn into my shame. For 16 years, I had no direct contact with them. I heard pieces through Aunt June. Mallory finished school in Nashville. She married a real estate developer named Caleb Stanton. They had 1 child, Owen. My father expanded Hale's Landing into a lakeside resort. My mother started a youth boating safety fundraiser in Ethan's memory. That detail almost made me laugh the first time I heard it. Almost. Mallory appeared in local newspaper photographs, beside life jacket donation bins. In one article, she described the accident as a tragedy that taught our family how quickly conditions on the lake can change. She never mentioned who had been driving. Neither did the article. I wrote to Ruth Ross 3 times over the years. The first letter came back unopened. The second didn't come back, but she never replied. In the third, I wrote only 1 paragraph. I told her I was sorry I had not reached Ethan in time. I told her I would understand if she never believed me. I told her I still remembered the green thread around the cuff of his jacket. That letter did not come back either. Silence was the only answer I received. Then, at 7:16 on a Saturday morning, my phone rang while I was conducting a training exercise on the Holston River. The number had a Blackwater area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something in me answered, "Hello?" For several seconds, there was only breathing. Then my mother said my name, Nora. 16 years disappeared. I was 18 again, standing beside a duffel bag. "Elaine," I said. "Not Mom. Elaine." Her breath caught. "It's Owen." I looked toward the river. 2 trainees were practicing a tethered crossing while my assistant instructor watched from shore. "What happened?" "He took a boat." The world narrowed. "What kind?" "A 14-foot runabout, red hull, 40 horsepower outboard." "When?" "Before 6. "Was he alone?" "A girl was with him, Tessa Ward. They haven't come back." "What's the weather?" "A storm moved in. I can see that." Dark clouds were building west of us. Blackwater was 78 miles away. "Have you called County Rescue?" "They're here." "Then let them work." My mother began crying. Not loudly. The controlled, breathless crying I remembered from church funerals. "They can't get through Widow's Pass. A tree came down across the access road, and the Northern Rescue boat lost power. That isn't my jurisdiction. The emergency coordinator said your unit is training nearby." We were not nearby. Not really. But we were the nearest state-qualified swift water team with a working dive boat. My mother knew because she had already asked someone. "Nora, please." I closed my eyes. For 16 years, I had imagined what I would say if she ever called. I had imagined hanging up. I had imagined asking whether she finally remembered she had 2 daughters. I had imagined silence. I had never imagined her calling because Mallory's child was missing on the same lake. Put the county coordinator on the phone. 27 minutes later, my team was loading equipment. This wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. 2 teenagers were missing in dangerous water. That was enough. If you were in my position, would you have gone back? After 16 years of silence, would you have returned to the lake that destroyed your family to save the child of the sister they chose over you? Tell me what you think. I knew my answer before my mother finished the call. Children don't inherit the guilt of their parents. At 8:49 a.m., I saw Blackwater Lake for the first time since I was 18. The road descended through the trees, and the water appeared between them in gray flashes. Rain moved across the surface in sheets. Hale's Landing had changed. The old bait shop was gone. A 3-story lodge stood in its place, with stone columns and balconies overlooking the marina. The docks were wider. The restaurant had been expanded. A large sign near the entrance read, "Hale's Landing Resort, 3 generations on Blackwater." I wondered which generation I had been erased from. Emergency vehicles filled the parking lot. Volunteers carried ropes and fuel cans between the docks. Families stood beneath the covered restaurant patio, watching the water. The moment our state truck pulled in, people turned. Some recognized the unit. A few recognized me. I could see it happen. A name becoming a face. A rumor from 16 years ago stepping out of a rescue vehicle. My father stood near the boat ramp. He was 70 now. His hair had gone white, and one side of his body seemed slightly stiff, as though he had suffered a minor stroke. But his posture was the same. Shoulders back. Chin raised. The owner of everything he could see. My mother stood beside him beneath a clear raincoat. Mallory was near the water. I knew her immediately. She was 32, but she still had the same blonde hair, now cut to her shoulders. She wore expensive running clothes and no jacket. Rain soaked her as she stared at the lake. When she saw me, her expression shifted through disbelief, relief, and something close to fear. "Nora." I walked past her. "Who last saw the boat?" Mallory followed. "I did." "At what time?" "About 5:40. "Where?" "Dock 4. "Did you give Owen permission?" "No." The answer came too quickly. "Where were the keys?" "In the office." "Locked?" "I don't know." "You own the marina." "Dad owns it." "Does Owen know how to operate that boat?" "He's been driving since he was 12. My father interrupted. "Enough questions. Find him." I turned toward him. For the first time in 16 years, we looked directly at each other. He did not say hello. Neither did I. The county coordinator, Marcus Bell, approached with a map protected inside a plastic sleeve. "We have one report from a fisherman near the West Channel," he said. "He heard an engine around 6:10, then nothing." "Any phone signal?" "Owen's last ping was near Widow's Pass at 6:14. Tessa's phone is off." "Water temperature?" 61. "Life jackets?" Mallory hesitated. "There were 2 missing from the rack." "What colors?" "One red, one yellow." A marina employee standing nearby shook his head. "Only the yellow one was missing before 6, he said. Mallory looked at him sharply. He lowered his eyes. I filed the contradiction away. "Fuel level?" "The boat was filled yesterday," my father said. "Emergency radio?" "In the glove box." "Tracker?" "Disabled." "Why?" No one answered. Marcus pointed at the map. "The current through Widow's Pass is running east because the dam released water overnight. If they lost power here, they could have been pushed toward the flooded timber." I studied the contour lines. A cold feeling moved through me. 16 years earlier, Ethan had died less than half a mile south of the same pass. "What's beyond the timber now?" I asked. My father said, "We cleared most of it when we expanded." Most isn't all. My assistant, Leah, began preparing the dive boat. I assigned positions: 1 operator, 2 surface rescue swimmers, 1 medical lead. I would enter the water if necessary. Mallory grabbed my arm. "Bring him back." I looked at her hand until she released me. "That's the plan." "No, Nora, promise me." "I don't make promises the water controls." Her face tightened. "You always talk like that?" "Only when people need the truth." We launched at 9:07. Rain struck the lake hard enough to blur the shoreline. I had crossed Blackwater hundreds of times as a teenager, but storms redraw familiar places. The old western cabins were gone. A concrete retaining wall now cut along the cove. Several new docks reached into water that had once been open. But the current felt the same beneath the hull. Cold, heavy, patient. Near Widow's Pass, we found the first sign. A red plastic fuel container turning in an eddy. It belonged to the missing boat. 200 yards farther east, Leah spotted a seat cushion caught in branches. Then we heard something. 3 short blasts. A whistle. Pause. 3 more. I raised my hand. The engine dropped to idle. Again. 3 blasts from inside the flooded timber. We moved toward the sound. The boat couldn't pass through the narrow gap between the trees, so we anchored and deployed a tether line. I entered first. The water was chest-deep near the outer trees, then suddenly dropped. Branches scraped my suit. Debris moved beneath the surface. The whistle sounded again. Closer now. I called out, "State Rescue! Keep making noise!" A girl answered, "Here!" We found Tessa clinging to the exposed roots of a fallen tree. She wore the yellow life jacket. Her lips were blue. Blood ran from a cut above her eyebrow. "Owen's under the boat," she gasped. "What boat?" She pointed through the trees. The red runabout had overturned in a narrow channel and become wedged between two submerged trunks. Only a section of the hull was visible. How long has he been under? He found an airspace. I could hear him before. I can't anymore. I secured Tessa to Leah's line. Get her out. What about Owen? Tessa cried. I'm going to him. The current was stronger around the overturned boat. I reached the hull and struck it 3 times. Owen! No answer. I struck it again. Then I heard a faint sound from beneath. 2 taps. Alive. I took 1 breath and went under. Visibility was less than a foot. The boat had trapped an air pocket near the bow, but the stern was pinned beneath a branch. I surfaced inside the pocket. Owen's face was inches from mine. He had no life jacket. His left leg was caught beneath a bent metal support. He was shivering violently. Are you Aunt Nora? He asked. It was the first thing he said. Yes. Mom said you'd know what to do. The sentence registered, but there was no time to examine it. I'm going to get you out. I can't feel my foot. That's okay. It doesn't feel okay. I know. His breathing was fast. I placed 1 hand against his shoulder. Listen to me. You're going to take slow breaths. You don't fight the boat. You don't fight me. You save your strength. He stared at me. My mom says you're the strong one. For a second, the darkness changed. I heard my mother's voice behind the repair shed. I saw the canvas bag by the door. Then I returned to the trapped boy in front of me. Sometimes people say that when they want you to carry something for them, I said. Right now, I need you to let me carry this. I dove beneath the air pocket and examined his leg by touch. A section of the seat frame had folded over his ankle. I couldn't move it by hand. I surfaced. I need to leave for 30 seconds. No. I'm getting a tool. Don't leave me. I will come back. Promise? This time, I made one. I promise. I exited the pocket, reached the surface, and signaled for the hydraulic spreader. The current pulled hard at my tether. Leah passed the compact tool through the branches. I went under again. Owen's tapping had weakened. I entered the air pocket. I'm back. He began crying. Quietly. I thought you were dead, he said. I'm difficult to get rid of. It took 4 minutes to spread the frame wide enough. 4 minutes is a long time when a boat is shifting above you. At one point, the hull moved and the air pocket narrowed. Owen screamed. I kept my voice level. Look at me. He did. Tell me your favorite food. What? Favorite food. Pepperoni pizza. Bad choice. He almost laughed. Yours? Anything I didn't have to cook. The metal groaned. I widened the frame another inch. His ankle came free. I secured him against my chest. When we go under, hold your breath and don't let go. He nodded. We submerged. For 3 seconds, the current pinned us against the hull. Then the tether tightened. Leah pulled. We cleared the branches and broke the surface. Owen coughed and screamed and clung to me so tightly I could barely swim. It was the most beautiful sound I had heard in years. We reached the rescue boat at 9:46. His body temperature was dangerously low, but his pulse was strong. Tessa was already receiving oxygen. As the medical team wrapped Owen in heated blankets, he caught my sleeve. Aunt Nora? I'm here. I didn't steal the keys. I looked at him. The boat engine rose as we turned toward shore. Who gave them to you? He looked toward Tessa, then back at me. My mom. The marina erupted when we returned. People cheered. My mother collapsed against my father. Mallory ran into the water before the boat had fully reached the ramp. Paramedics stopped her while they transferred Owen to a stretcher. She shouted his name. Owen turned his face away. I noticed. Tessa's parents followed her ambulance to the hospital. Owen was taken into the Marina restaurant, which had been converted into a temporary treatment area because the road to the county hospital was blocked by fallen trees. He was stable. His ankle was badly sprained but not broken. Mallory stood near the treatment room, crying into Caleb's chest. My father approached me while I removed my wet gear. You did your job. Not thank you. Not you saved him. You did your job. I did. He lowered his voice. We need to speak before the sheriff begins asking questions. There it was. Not 10 minutes after his grandson had been pulled from beneath an overturned boat. The story. The protection. The lie. What do you need to say? Privately. I'm working. This is family. I looked across the restaurant. My mother stood beside Mallory. Mallory wasn't watching her son. She was watching me. Family had 16 years to speak privately, I said. Whatever you have to say it here. My father's mouth tightened. My mother approached. Nora, please don't make this difficult. The exact same rhythm, the exact same tone. As if the problem had never been what they did. Only how I reacted. County Sheriff Liam Ross entered through the side door. I recognized him from photographs. Ethan's older brother. He had been 22 when Ethan died and away at college on the night of the accident. Now he wore a sheriff's uniform and carried a rain-darkened hat beneath one arm. His eyes found mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "We'll need statements from everyone." Mallory wiped her face. Owen took the keys without permission. From behind the treatment room curtain, a monitor beeped steadily. Sheriff Ross opened a notebook. When did you discover they were missing? Around 6:15. You told the coordinator 5:40. I was confused. Did you see them leave? No. The marina employee who had contradicted her earlier stood near the kitchen doors. Mallory noticed him. Travis may have seen something, she added. He was working. Travis looked startled. I didn't come in until 6. My father gave him a warning look. Sheriff Ross saw it. So did I. Mallory continued. Owen has been acting out lately. He wants attention. Nora was here with her rescue unit, and maybe he thought... I arrived at 8:49, I said. Mallory stopped. I know. I just mean he knows what you do. He follows you online. That surprised me. I looked toward the curtain. My nephew knew who I was. Mallory had told him enough to know my job, but not enough to tell him why I had disappeared. Sheriff Ross asked, was the boat tracker disabled before or after they left? My father said it has been malfunctioning. Travis spoke again. It worked yesterday. My father turned. Are you certain? Are you certain? Travis swallowed. Yes, sir. My mother took my arm. We should talk now. I removed her hand. Sheriff Ross watched us. Is there something I need to know? My mother smiled. Even then, even soaked from rain, with 2 teenagers receiving treatment yards away, she found the polished smile she had used for customers and church committees. Just a misunderstanding. Then clear it up. She glanced toward the treatment area. Not in front of Owen. From behind the curtain, my nephew spoke. I'm awake. Silence moved through the restaurant. Mallory stepped toward him. Honey, you need to rest. I heard you. Owen, you said I stole the keys. Sheriff Ross moved closer to the curtain. Did you? No. Mallory's face lost color. Owen continued. Mom gave them to me last night. Caleb stared at his wife. What? She said the storm wouldn't reach us until afternoon. She wanted footage of the West cabins before the investor meeting. Mallory shook her head. He's confused. He's hypothermic. I'm not confused. Owen, stop. You told me Grandpa would finally take me seriously if I made the video. Caleb stepped away from her. You sent him onto the lake to film a property promotion? I didn't send him, he asked. You gave a 16-year-old the keys before a storm. He's been driving for years. My father intervened. This can be handled within the family. Sheriff Ross looked at him. 2 minors nearly drowned. It stopped being a private family matter when the rescue call was placed. My mother leaned close to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Say you authorized it. I thought I had misheard. What? You're a state rescue instructor. Say Owen contacted you about practicing navigation before your exercise. Say you knew they were going out. That would be a lie. It would protect him. It would protect Mallory. It would protect everyone. My license would be investigated. You would survive an investigation. There it was. My mother looked into my eyes and said the sentence for the third time in my life. You're the strong one, Nora. You'll be fine. The restaurant became very still. I don't know whether she realized how loudly she had spoken. Sheriff Ross heard her. My father heard her. Mallory heard her. And behind the thin treatment room curtain, Owen heard her too. He pulled the curtain aside. His face was pale beneath the blankets. What does that mean? No one answered. Owen looked at me. Why did Grandma say that like she's said it before? Mallory moved toward him. Sweetheart, you're exhausted. He turned away from her. Aunt Nora? This was the moment my parents had feared for 16 years. Not a courtroom, not a lawyer, not a newspaper. A 16-year-old boy asking a direct question in a room where no one could control the answer. I looked at Mallory. She silently begged me not to speak. My father's expression became hard. My mother's eyes filled with tears. All three of them still expected me to carry it, because I always had. I faced Owen. She said it to me the night Ethan Ross died. Sheriff Ross stopped writing. Mallory whispered, "Nora!" I continued, "Your mother was driving the boat." Owen looked from me to Mallory. "No. Yes. That's not what happened," my father said. Sheriff Ross raised one hand. "Let her finish." My father glared at him. "This concerns your brother. You can't be objective." "You're right," Liam said. "So choose your next words carefully, because I'll be requesting an outside investigator." My mother stepped forward. "This is cruel. Owen almost died. Which is why he deserves the truth," I said. Mallory began crying. "You don't understand what it was like. I was there. I was 16. So was Ethan." Her face crumpled. The room seemed to contract around us. Rain struck the windows. A generator hummed behind the building. Owen stared at his mother. "Were you driving?" Mallory covered her mouth. Caleb said her name. "Mallory." She looked at our parents. My mother shook her head once. A tiny movement. "Don't." Mallory saw it. Then something inside her gave way. "Yes." The word barely carried across the room. Owen's expression changed. Not dramatically. That was worse. A child's entire understanding of his family rearranged itself behind his eyes. Mallory sank into a chair. "I was driving." My father closed his eyes. My mother whispered, "You're in shock." "No, Mom." "Don't say anything else." I let her take the blame. "You were a child. I let Nora lose everything. We protected you. You threw her out." My mother's voice sharpened. "We saved your future." Mallory looked at me. For the first time since the night of the accident, she did not look away. "I'm sorry. 16 years earlier, those words might have saved something. Now they landed quietly between us. Too late to undo the door closing. Too late to give Ethan back to his mother. Too late to return the life I might have lived. But not too late to matter." Sheriff Ross sat down slowly. "Tell me everything." My father objected. "You're not taking statements from my daughter without an attorney." Mallory laughed once through her tears. A broken sound. "You didn't get Nora an attorney." "We offered." "No, you offered one if she confessed." My mother said, "Mallory, stop." Mallory stood. "No, you don't get to tell me to stop anymore." She turned to Sheriff Ross. "Nora followed us because I stole the Maribel. Ethan wanted me to turn around. I got angry. I sped up. I hit the tree." Liam's face remained controlled, but his hands tightened around the notebook. "Did Nora operate the Maribel at any point that night?" "No." "Did she cause the collision?" No. Did she attempt to rescue my brother? Mallory looked at me. She went back for him until her lips were blue. Dad had to pull her away after the paramedics stopped. I had forgotten that. Or buried it. My father had pulled me away. Not out of comfort. Because I was screaming at the paramedics to continue. Mallory wiped her face. Nora saved me. She saved Jenna. She saved Daniel. Then we told everyone she killed Ethan. My mother broke. We did what parents do. Sheriff Ross looked at her. No. His voice was quiet. You did what frightened people do. Don't confuse that with parenting. The treatment room door opened. A volunteer medic stepped out. Behind him stood a woman holding a cane. Ruth Ross, Ethan's mother. She had arrived during the rescue and had been waiting in the back office because seeing me had overwhelmed her. I don't know how long she had been listening. Long enough. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her dark hair had become white, but her eyes were the same eyes I had seen across the cemetery 16 years earlier. Eyes that had believed I took her son. Mallory went completely still. Ruth looked at her. You were driving? Mallory began to answer. No sound came. Ruth turned to my parents. You knew? My mother pressed both hands together. Ruth, we were grieving too. You knew? My father's shoulders lowered. Yes. The word moved through the room like the final crack in a dam. Ruth looked at me. For 16 years, I had imagined this moment. I thought I would be angry. I thought I would demand an apology. Instead, I saw a woman who had lost her son and then spent 16 years hating the wrong person because my family had given her somewhere to place the pain. I'm sorry, she said. I shook my head. You didn't know. I should have listened. You had buried your child. Tears filled her eyes. I returned your first letter. I know. I read the third one. I couldn't speak. The green thread, she said. You remembered the green thread on his jacket. Yes. I sewed that jacket. The room disappeared around us. For one moment, there was only a mother, and the person who had held her son's sleeve beneath dark water. Ruth reached for my hand. I let her take it. You tried to bring him home, she whispered. I did. I know that now. Behind us, my father spoke. This has gone far enough. Ruth released my hand and turned toward him. No, Dean. It went far enough 16 years ago. My father looked around the restaurant. Employees, volunteers, relatives, sheriff's deputies, people who had admired him, people who had believed his version. His greatest fear had never been losing me. It was losing control of the story. He pointed at me. You came back here and destroyed this family in one morning. I looked at the wet rescue suit hanging from my waist, at Owen beneath the blankets, at Mallory crying beside the window, at my mother, who still seemed unable to understand why sacrifice felt different when the sacrificed person finally refused. I came back and pulled your grandson out of the lake. You know what I mean? Yes, I said. I do. I stepped closer. You think the truth destroyed this family because the lie was the only thing holding it together. He stared at me. You could have handled this privately. Ethan didn't drown privately. No one moved. My mother began to cry again. Nora, please, we can still fix this. I looked at her. We? You and Mallory can speak. We can explain that everyone was young and frightened. Liam can keep this from becoming a spectacle. Sheriff Ross said. No, I can't. My mother ignored him. You don't understand what this will do to the marina. There it was. Not Ethan. Not Owen. Not me. The marina. The reputation. The family name on the sign. You threw me out with one bag, I said. You kept my savings. You removed my photographs. You let an entire town believe I killed a boy I tried to save. We were protecting your sister. You were protecting yourselves. You survived. My mother said it like proof that she had made the correct choice. I looked at her for a long time. Yes, I said. I survived. Her face softened with relief. Then I finished. But survival is not permission. I collected my gear. The storm was beginning to weaken. Owen called my name before I reached the door. I turned. Will I see you again? Mallory looked at me. She didn't answer for him. That mattered. If you want to, I said. He nodded. I do. My father started to object. Owen looked at him. No one asked you. At 16, he had done something I hadn't managed until I was 18. He had separated love from obedience. I walked outside. The rain had slowed to a mist. The lake was still rough, but the clouds were breaking near the eastern ridge. Aunt June was waiting beside my truck. I hadn't called her. She had seen the emergency alert and driven to Blackwater. At 71, she still wore her gray hair in the same shortcut. She still drove the green Honda, though the passenger door had finally been replaced. She looked at my face. You got him? Yes. Both kids? Yes. She nodded. Then she opened her arms. I stepped into them. She did not tell me I was strong. She never had to. The official consequences came slowly. Real life rarely delivers justice in a single dramatic moment. Sheriff Ross requested an outside review of the current boating incident because of his connection to Ethan. Mallory admitted she had given Owen the keys and instructed him to record promotional footage of the western cabins before the storm arrived. The marina's youth rental and training permits were temporarily suspended. The county fined Hale's Landing for multiple safety violations, including the disabled tracker and missing equipment inspections. Caleb took Owen to stay with his parents while the investigation continued. He filed for separation 3 months later. Not because Mallory had made one mistake, because he realized how many lies had been required to keep that mistake hidden. The old accident could not be prosecuted in the way people online sometimes imagine. Too much time had passed. Evidence had been lost. Several statements had been taken from frightened teenagers. But Sheriff Ross added Mallory's confession, my statement, and my parents' admission to the historical file. The operator was no longer listed as undetermined. The amended report named Mallory Hale. A local newspaper published a correction to an article it had run 16 years earlier. It was 6 paragraphs long. No photograph. No dramatic headline. But my name was there. The report confirmed that I had arrived in a second boat and participated in the rescue. I printed 1 copy. Not for revenge. Not to frame. I folded it and placed it inside the canvas duffel bag Aunt June had kept in her attic all those years. My father called me once. His first words were not, "I'm sorry." They were, "The marina has lost 3 major events because of this." I almost laughed. What would you like me to do? Release a statement saying the family has resolved the misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. You've made your point. I wasn't making a point. Then what do you want? At 18, I would have answered that question with a list. My savings, my room, my reputation, my parents, my sister, 16 missing birthdays. An apology spoken before the people who had believed them. At 34, the answer was simpler. Nothing. He went quiet. You came back after 16 years and now you want nothing? That's right. I don't understand you. I know. I ended the call. My mother sent 4 emails. In the first, she explained. In the second, she blamed my father. In the third, she blamed Mallory. In the fourth, she wrote that she had done the best she could with 2 very different daughters. I replied once, "You didn't choose between 2 daughters. You chose which daughter would be allowed to break and which one would be expected to absorb the impact." She never answered. Mallory entered therapy. For the first 6 months, our contact consisted of short messages, no emotional speeches, no requests for forgiveness. She sent 1 sentence on the anniversary of Ethan's death. I told Owen the complete truth today. I responded, "Good." A month later, she asked whether I would meet her in a public place. I almost refused. Then I remembered that boundaries are not walls unless you need them to be. Sometimes they are doors with locks you control. We met at a diner halfway between Knoxville and Blackwater. Mallory arrived early. She looked older. Not physically. Honestly, for the first time in her life, she looked like someone who understood that consequences were not cruelty. She placed an envelope on the table. I did not touch it. What is that? The money Dad took from you. I looked at her. He used it to repair the Maribel. I found the old Marina ledger. The amount inside was more than $3,400. She had added interest. I don't need this. I know. Then why bring it? Because it was yours. I took the envelope. Not because I needed the money. Because refusing it would have allowed my family to keep one more piece of what they had taken. Mallory wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I used to tell myself I was a child. You were. But I wasn't a child for 16 years. No. I could have told the truth at 19, or 20, or when I got married, or when Owen was born. Yes, she nodded. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she did not use them to ask anything from me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. That's good. I want to earn the right to be in the same room with you. I studied her. That will take time. I know. And I may never call you my sister the way I used to. I know. You don't get to rush me because telling the truth made you uncomfortable. I know. For the first time, she understood that I know was not the end of a conversation. It was the beginning of responsibility. Owen recovered completely. His ankle healed. The fear took longer. He began attending water safety classes but refused to enter a motorboat for almost a year. We exchanged messages every few weeks. He asked questions about rescue training, then about Ethan, then about me. One evening he sent, "Why didn't you hate me?" I wrote back, "Because you were never the person who hurt me." The following summer, Sheriff Ross and Ruth established a free youth water rescue program at the County Recreation Center. They named it the Ethan Ross Water Safety Initiative. Not Hale, not Mallory, not Nora. Ethan. Ruth asked me to teach the first class. I almost said no. Blackwater still entered my dreams. But some places should not belong forever to the worst thing that happened there. On the first morning, 20 teenagers stood beside the water wearing bright red life jackets. Owen was one of them. Mallory watched from the parking lot, but did not approach me. She understood the boundary. Ruth stood near the dock holding a small wooden box. Before the class began, she handed it to me. Inside was Ethan's emergency whistle, green cord, the same color as the thread on his jacket. He bought it the week before the accident, she said. He was supposed to take a lifeguard course that summer. I held it carefully. I can't take this. Yes, you can. It belongs to you. She closed my fingers around it. He would want it used. I attached the whistle to my rescue vest. Then I faced the class. I taught them how to check a weather report properly, how to identify a changing current, why confidence and competence were not the same thing, why the strongest swimmer should never assume the water owed them mercy. At the end of the class, Owen stayed behind to help collect equipment. He lifted an old canvas gear bag and smiled. This thing weighs nothing. I looked at the bag. For a moment, I saw myself at 18, standing beside the road with everything I owned. No, I said. Sometimes the lightest bags carry the most. My parents believed throwing me out would save Mallory. It didn't. It only taught her that someone else would always be chosen to absorb the consequences of her decisions. They believed calling me strong meant I could not be harmed. What it really meant was that my pain was convenient. They believed I would always come back when the family needed something. In a way, they were right. I came back when Owen needed me. I entered the water. I brought him home. But I did not carry the lie back with him. That is the difference between helping someone and sacrificing yourself for them. Helping is a choice. Sacrifice without consent is exploitation wearing the language of love. Today, the canvas bag sits on the top shelf of my closet. Inside it are three things: the amended accident report, my original program identification card, and the emergency whistle Ruth gave me. I don't keep the bag because I am still living in that day. I keep it because my parents wanted me to believe that leaving their house with one bag meant I had nothing. They were wrong. I had the truth. I had the part of myself they had failed to train out of me. And eventually, I had a life in which being strong no longer meant being disposable. If someone in your family calls you the strong one, listen carefully to what they ask from you next. Strength should never be the price of belonging. And love should never require one child to disappear so another can remain protected. That's my story. One lake, one bag, two teenagers rescued 16 years apart, and one lie I finally refused to carry back to shore. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who has spent their life being told they could handle more simply because they always had. Subscribe for more stories about family, boundaries, and the quiet moment a person finally chooses truth over the role they were assigned. I'll see you in the next story.